New games get announced with billion-dollar budgets just to die out a few months later. While Counter-Strike has barely changed in 25 years and has only grown in player numbers. This is what every game developer wants. Why is Counter-Strike allowed to do that? What makes it so special? I spent the last 4 months analyzing Counter-Strike's success, and let me tell you, it's not about the skins. It's about the way the game is designed. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand what makes Counter-Strike special, but also how its design philosophy has already reshaped one of the biggest gaming franchises. One thing I realized as I was writing the script was that the player base for Counter-Strike behaves very differently to almost every other game when it comes to change. First of all, Counter-Strike doesn't have that much content put into it. There's stuff added like operations or new cases, but compared to other games, that is nothing. League of Legends, for example, another big online game, has updates every 2 weeks, which includes balance changes and often several pages long updates. Almost every season introduces huge gameplay changes. In Counter-Strike, we are excited if an update comes with more than 3 lines.
It's Counter-Strike! It's happening!
The even weirder thing is that Counter-Strike fans want it like that. Every time the dev team changes something, it is criticized very heavily. In League of Legends, on the other hand, if there wasn't a big change in the last few months, players will demand changes being made. It gets boring to players playing the same meta for a few months. It almost feels like there's something wrong with the core gameplay and the dev teams need to change something just so people don't notice. For other games, change is the reason to play the game. In Counter-Strike, the lack of change is the reason to play. That is kind of unique in the gaming world. I spent a lot of time on this video, and if you want to support what I'm doing and get featured in my next video like this, subscribe to my Patreon. Also, I'm some 600 subscribers away from finally getting paid by YouTube, so make sure you subscribe here as well. Also, I now have my own cryptocurrency. The one company who has benefited the most from this is clearly Valve. Counter-Strike was originally a mod to Half-Life and was created in 1999. In 2000, Valve decided to buy the rights for the mods and hired the original mod makers to work on the standalone game. Valve didn't change much with the game, they basically just made it more stable, added some comfort features and sold it in retail. I believe that someone at Valve saw that there was something special about Counter-Strike, and history has proven them right. I don't think there's a game in history that has made as much money as Counter-Strike with the time and effort that was put into it. In many ways, Counter-Strike is Valve's golden goose, who continuously shits out golden profit eggs, while Valve only needs to feed it the occasional update. So what is actually going on inside the goose? And why does it matter? Because game developers care about this. Everyone wants to find the formula to make their game interesting and timeless without the need to constantly inject their games with big updates. Bringing new content to a game is expensive, and you need to guarantee continuous income. When you Google what makes Counter-Strike special, you will get a lot of surface-level explanations. The game is easy to understand but hard to master. It is really addicting. It has rewarding gameplay. But all these just explain how it feels to play the game, but no one is going into why it feels that way or how to replicate it in other games. Why does the gameplay feel rewarding? What aspects exactly make Counter-Strike easy to understand but hard to master? I will now explain to you the secret to Counter-Strike's designs in 4 levels. We will start at the very surface level and then work ourselves down to the core. And at the end I will show you how the Counter-Strike formula has already impacted one huge game franchise and made it more successful. One thing you immediately realize when you play Counter-Strike that it is quite easy to understand. You can explain the game in a minute or 2 and then you know as much about the rules of the game as a pro who played all his life. Compared to many other games, which are difficult to understand, with hundreds of abilities, hidden interactions and in general things you need to learn over hundreds of hours, Counter-Strike is very simple. One would assume that the more features a game has, the longer it stays interesting and relevant, but the opposite seems to be true here. So easy solution, just make the game simple. Just remove 100 champions and items from League of Legends, for example. But it doesn't really work that way. The question is, how can you keep your game as simple as possible while it's still difficult to master and interesting to players? There seems to be something special in the sense that even though there aren't any crazy mechanics in the game doesn't get boring, while other games release with crazy features and mechanics just to go stale a few months later. Another topic that comes up in the discussion about Counter-Strike is balancing. Many people will say it's one of the most balanced video games out there. And looking at the rare balance changes we get, I would say that's true. Balancing means that the winning chances for each side are equal. As we established before, Counter-Strike is quite simple with its mechanics. The analogy I quite like is the idea that these mechanics, like weapons, movement and utility, are like tools the game provides to the players. Counter-Strike's strategy seems to be to give a small but well-polished toolbox to the player. It is easier to keep a game balanced when you don't have a lot of things to balance. But balance alone doesn't explain anything. There are many games that are balanced but still seem not to have the special sauce that Counter-Strike has. For example, let's look at Valorant. Is Valorant a balanced game? The answer is sort of. When you look at the rocket launcher from Raze, for example, the thing everyone likes to shit on, it becomes very clear that it is a very strong and overpowered ability. The rocket launcher can one-shot multiple people, and there's no real way to counter it. But does that mean the whole game is unbalanced? No, because everyone has access to these crazy agents and abilities, or even can pick Raze themselves. There's a difference between the whole game being balanced and the tools and mechanics being balanced themselves. This is where Counter-Strike does things differently. It has a very particular way of balancing its mechanics, and other games have been taking notice and changing their games accordingly. What makes Counter-Strike rewarding to play? We heard before that people feel that way about Counter-Strike, but why is it that way? What makes something rewarding to play? Let's take real life as an example. Wait, not that one. I mean the thing everyone has outside of video games. What feels rewarding here is things like getting a good grade in an exam. But not just that, it only feels rewarding when you learned a lot and sacrificed a lot of time in order to get that good grade. Getting a good grade, even though you didn't learn a lot, still feels good, but it doesn't feel rewarding. For example, killing someone with a rocket launcher in Valorant feels good, but it doesn't really feel rewarding. The way you get the rocket launcher is either by getting kills, dying, planting, defusing the bomb, or picking up an ultimate orb. Except for the orb, all of these things are things you would be doing anyway. You're not really giving anything up or need to trade something off in order to get the rocket launcher. In Counter-Strike, the most rewarding thing is getting a headshot with a deagle. It feels rewarding because the deagle can one-shot people with a headshot, but you have to stand still and it shoots very slowly. When you take your time to line up your shot, you're taking a lot of risk. That's why when it works and you hit it, it feels so rewarding. Playing Counter-Strike feels a little bit like playing jazz, because it's never obvious what to do next, and it fully depends on the situation and the context. The effect that has on gameplay is that there's no obvious winning strategy. How to use your tool is totally dependent on the context. It keeps the game dynamic. So let me take you through a scenario in Counter-Strike. You are in a clutch, it's a 1 vs 2. Your team tried taking the B side and traded poorly. You know that one defender is on B, he got your last teammate, but you don't know where the other player is. He's probably rotating to the side. You have a decision to make, either engage one of the players and try to go B or go to the other bomb site. As you are waiting, you hear the other player rotating. He was worried you would get into a 1 vs 1 situation, so he decided to run there to help his teammate. But now you know that they are both B. You decide to go to A, but do you run there? If they hear you, they will probably send one player to rotate and he will be there before you. But if you sneak, they might clear B side and then come both to A. This is what I love about this principle in Counter-Strike. It explains why seemingly simple situations can turn so complex and how making decisions seems so meaningful. This really explains the hard to master part. If everything depends on context and also your own personal skill, you have a lot to master. If my character had an ability that would just let me teleport to the other side, like in Valorant, you wouldn't even need to make all these choices. These unbalanced mechanics or tools take the dynamic out of a situation. I realize that it might seem like I hate games like Valorant or League of Legends, but that isn't true. I like and play those games often. But the games who don't incorporate the trade-off principle need way more updates, content and change to stay dynamic. Just look at how Riot needs to constantly pump in new updates to their games. New balance changes, new champions and agents who all have even crazier abilities than the last one. While Counter-Strike just exists and is awesome. Just imagine you round the corner in Counter-Strike and someone would jump from the side and kill you with a rocket launcher like in Valorant. For the other person it will probably feel awesome, but for you, as a recipient, it kinda sucks. It feels like you didn't get killed by the other player, but by the rules of the game. This person just had the ability points in that round and he kinda gets to kill you without you having the ability to do much about it. Then you're not really playing against the other player, but also against the game. What's so great about Counter-Strike is that the game takes a back seat. It lets you play against the other player without interrupting. This 50-50 principle or trade-off principle makes the experience kind of flat, but it also means that the player is fully in control. You can almost never blame anything but yourself if things don't go your way. What separates Counter-Strike from every other game is that every tool, every mechanic you can use has good trade-offs. What does that mean? Let's look at movement first. Every form of movement has its advantages and disadvantages. If you run, you might be faster to the place where you want to go and you're more difficult to hit, but you have to trade off that you're now very inaccurate and everyone on the map can hear you. If you decide to stand still, then no one will hear you and you are very accurate, but you will be an easy target as well and you won't be able to move. Even the simple act of shooting your gun has drawbacks. First of all, you will make noise so everybody will know where you are, and you also increase your inaccuracy. Just the whole aspect of noise being a balancing tool in CS is so genius and revolutionary. The reason people love the movement in Counter-Strike is not because you can do crazy things like wall rides, it's because of these trade-offs. From before we know something feels rewarding if you have to give something up for it. And Counter-Strike absolutely nails that. Even with something like bunny hopping, it can make you extremely fast, but if you mess up the timing, you will be even slower than if you would have just ran normally. If you think about it, the tools in Counter-Strike have a chance to make your situation better, but also equally worse. In a sense, it's a 50-50 relationship. A good game mechanic or tool has an equal possibility of making your situation worse. And I think that's what resonates with us as players. Similar to real life, everything comes with a price. You want to eat something, you will have to trade off time and money to get it. It's the same with movies, where we usually see the heroes go through some kind of difficulties. They are in a desperate situation and need to get out of it. But if they don't have to sacrifice something to get where they want to be and things just magically improve, we think it's bullshit. The happy ending needs to be earned. That's a key aspect of telling compelling stories. What I love about Counter-Strike is that the game doesn't give you anything for free. You have to fight for every advantage. That's why in Counter-Strike we can play the same map with the same guns for thousands of rounds. Every round feels like a new story. The one game that has taken the most notice from this principle is Call of Duty. We all know that the standalone Call of Duty games don't have a long lifespan. You can do downhill skiing on those player number stats. But things changed when Call of Duty Warzone was released in 2020. Warzone has survived way longer and has been way more successful than the standalone game. I think that's down to the trade-off principle. Call of Duty is famous for its kill streaks. But in the standalone games, you don't have to give something up for it. You get the kill streaks by doing things you would be doing anyway, getting frags. As a result, many people get tired of the game and it loses dynamic. Warzone on the other hand is completely different. In order to get things like a UAV, you first need to finish someone off, which is risky in itself in a battle royale game. Then you need to pick up the money, which is also risky, and then you need to find a shop and stand there to buy it, which is also risky. In order to get an advantage like the UAV, you need to risk a lot. There's a trade-off. And you can see that Warzone has done way better than the other Call of Duty games, even though the dev team doesn't have to develop a whole new game to keep players interested. Before you click off, let me leave you with one last quote. As the old Benjamin said, there's nothing certain except death, taxes, and Counter-Strike.